Just before we came in here, I told Johnny, you make sure you bring any newspapers you're reading with you. And he didn't. So
brought in two.
We'll have a selection of papers.
I only read two this morning.
Did you? All right. We're going to start with the Times Ireland edition. Time to act over abuse of McClean. So Mick McCarthy has turned his full support behind James McClean after the Ireland International accused the English FA and British anti-racism charity Kick It Out of being a bunch of hypocrites, a bunch of cowards in relation to sectarian abuse he has suffered. This was interesting, right? So James McClean was comparing himself with Raheem Sterling, and I don't know if it was subtle enough, right? I think that he should be saying what's happening here. I'm similar to this, but I don't know if all abuse is the same. Like, I just don't think it is. I think there's been an orchestrated campaign against Raheem Sterling by the newspapers to whip up hate and to use him as somebody that they can turn into a punching bag. It's not quite been the same with McClean. Like, there are different things, and so I don't know that he needs to make his point by bringing Raheem Sterling into the argument.
Yeah, I think he probably downplayed the Raheem Sterling stuff as well, which didn't do him any favours, because his entire point is 100% valid.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. Like, you stand in the case on its own merit, and it's absolutely fine.
It's probably garnered a lot more media attention because of the Sterling reference, but racism is racism at the same time, Ger. And McClean's been, he's been the subject of racist abuse because he's a Republican from Derry.
I'm not diminishing that at all.
Yeah.
You can make that point, though, without dragging Raheem Sterling into your argument.
I tend to agree. I don't know whether it's hard to know with McClean sometimes whether there's an awful lot of pre-thought gone into it, or whether he's kind of coming up with it off the cuff because he speaks from his heart. But I'd certainly laud him for bringing this up, because I think there is huge hypocrisy there, and I don't think he's been, I suppose what we should focus on is what he felt the FA treated him like after this was just purely tokenistic in terms of their backing for him, and I totally agree.
Aidan Forker, the Armagh defender, says the team are determined to shake their habit of coughing up big leads. So this is Forker. We'll learn from Cavan draw. One of the games of the weekend was the Armagh Cavan game, and Ulster football, the best competition in the country at the moment.
Well, it was interesting. I saw people giving out on Twitter that RT was serving up two absolute dead rubbers in the hurling whilst there was this great game going on in Ulster, but at the same time, the Munster Championship has just become a bit bizarre. Like, who would have forecast Tip winning at half time pretty much in Ennis? And we have a couple of decent provincial championships in Fair. We've two. Granted, you're from Kildare, but I think we do have two dead rubbers in the south and the east. But there's still a bit of life left. I mean, there'll be a lot of hype about Roscommon and Galway in the province. Even at that aforementioned Rose of Newbridge, there were a lot of Roscommon people there because we live quite near the border, and there's huge anticipation for that game. And it'll be interesting. That looked like an absolute Keane Mackey as well. I think the amount of years he's been playing for Cavan and what he scored, the equalisers he scored at the weekend, great to see.
Yeah, China in his hands. North City's Adam Ida, IDAH, Adam Ida.
Yeah.
Scores 2 penalties. Ireland under 21s demolished China under 23s 4-1 in the Toulon tournament. So they are playing their Olympic team. We're playing our under 21s. That's why they get the slightly older players. I didn't see the game. You were watching it. You said we scored after 33 seconds without a Chinese player touching the ball.
Yeah, it was. It was, as I said, it was quite strange in that it was on that channel, and there was there were a handful at the game and played in like serious heat as well. And we're not really designed for that. I guess. I suppose probably some of our players might be able to handle it better than others, but in fairness, we did give it. We started off with huge intensity. In 33 seconds, China hadn't touched the ball, and what I loved about this was Ireland got the ball and they just started passing it straight away. Back four started passing it, but then one of the centre backs, I'm not sure if it was. Possibly Masterson. It may have been Masterson, maybe O'Shea. It was one of the others. They played this raking ball down the field to put in Connolly. Now, Connolly was only playing because Ferrugia wasn't playing, as far as I know. Connolly's from Galway as well, and he's one of our bright hopes. But we'd scored after 33 seconds without them touching the ball. This is a good Chinese team. Like, they are actually, like, China's obviously not a football force, but China will definitely grow. Goose Hiddink is their manager. They were strong. Stephen Kenny made references after the game. They're a strong physical team, but they could play. They weren't great defensively, but But for Ireland to do what they did, and the narrative of, Mick McCarthy's been asked about going into the Denmark game about, Denmark effectively saying that we're a caveman agricultural football team. To see the young teams that we have now saying that's not the agenda for Irish players anymore. We can dictate games and we can pass the ball. They were doing little triangle passing among the two centre backs and just doing little 1-2s. Beautiful to see. Now Kenny can be a bit cavalier maybe at times as well, but I thought it was fantastic. The Irish Times obviously, McCarthy relieved, new handball rules haven't kicked in just yet. I think it's a well worth reading his arguments on the handball. Maybe we'll have time to talk about that. Doherty gives Coleman his full backing, and an interesting article then from Kevin McSay. He's talking about where he fancies Roscommon to beat Galway, his former team, and he's wary of Mayo. He's saying that wouldn't be guaranteed at all they're going to make the Super 8s.
He doesn't think Mayo are meant to right.
He thinks they're it's far from guaranteed, and he also fancies Roscommon to be Galway, which I think a lot of people in Galway wouldn't disagree with him on that. I think it's going to be very close. Also speaks highly of the Kerry team and that forward line, how dynamic and speedy it is going to be, and reckons that Dublin are basically flawless at the moment pretty much as well.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the star here. And it's McClean gets mixed backing, so we've talked about that. You'll never walk alone. Final hero Origi set to cop a new deal at Poole. I mean, there were 2 or 3 times when Origi got the ball, and I just needed to do the simple pass through, and it was a 1-on-1 for Salah, and the game was going to be over. And you're like, it's not really. Not an amazing replacement for Roberto Firmino, and Firmino's injured / out of form as he is at the moment. And then he scores out of nothing. You're like, it didn't even look dangerous. It was like he's gone away from the goal a bit, and then, so I don't know.
Yeah,
he's a brilliant sub to have.
Yeah, he is. That's the thing. And as we were saying on Saturday, the players they bring off the bench. Like Liverpool have a fairly set strategy in terms of how they play. If you're lined up to match that, and then you bring on somebody entirely different, I think that's a very good thing. And his place in the history of getting there, like, he's one of the most important players in terms of their win the Champions League, because the Barca game was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And he's probably gone down into kind of folklore in terms of the player that 90% of Liverpool fans probably thought was crap, but actually won them the Champions League in some respects.
Is he the new David Fairclough? Is that what we're saying? I don't even remember David Fairclough.
No, but I do. He is the quintessential super sub.
What have you got?
Well, you just handed me papers there.
Just to read the back page of. Yeah, go on. Yeah, sorry.
Let's start with the Racing Post then. Veteran Prendergast relishing battle with big guns. First 6 home in the derby on Saturday were trained in Ireland. Now, if 86-year-old Kevin Prendergast didn't have Mad Moon, they'd all have been trained by Aidan O'Brien. And I think what's been kind of portrayed as a really successful Irish story would have had a different kind of narrative if they were all trained by Aidan O'Brien, because you're like, well, not sure that's not necessarily a great thing. But Prendergast is just talking about how difficult it is to compete with him. He's 87, I think, next month. He says, there's a lovely line where he says, I'm still enjoying it as much as I ever have. I'm still going shooting and doing all the things I love doing. He actually fishes in Newbridge, in my neck of the woods. He comes down fishing. As soon as I can't do these things, they can pull the curtain behind me, but hopefully that won't be for a very long time. It's amazing stuff. Like 87 years of age competing at the top with a small string of horses.
Yeah, it's amazing. PSG Chiefs 100 million bid for Leeds. So Paris Saint-Germain's mega-rich owner is in talks to take over Leeds for 100 million. The French Giants president Nasser Al Khalifa met Elland Road owner Andrea Radrizzani in Doha. It's not great when you can own a couple of clubs in different countries, is it? It kind of just leads to a sense.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Leeds is a club, so much potential. Just the crowds are getting this season, how close they were. Definitely a one city club as well. Big potential.
Take aim, hand, fire. I don't get it. Take aim and fire, but I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, obviously it's take aim and fire, and then it's a play on the fact that you're aiming at the hand.
Right.
I don't know if you read all that McCarthy stuff, but again, searingly honest, typical Mick. How would you not love him? Basically saying that the penalty in the Champions League final. I thought in terms of harsh handballs, that one was probably one that you could say, well, you could give it like. Whereas some of the the handball that Man United got against PSG, I thought was a totally wrong decision. But McCarthy's making the point that what we're going to have, you can't, if your hands are behind your back now, that's not a natural position to move. So like, whilst you're trying not to handle the ball, you should also be able to actually move your body best to defend. And he's making the point that
as the United game, same referee.
Yeah, his team. He's just said, with pure honesty, yes, we would actually. And if my players were trying to aim to get a player to handball, to basically aim the ball at his hand and earn a penalty, why would we not?
If this rule existed when Robbie Keane was playing, he would have won about 10 to 15 penalties this season with it. I mean, it's exactly the type of thing that Robbie would have done. And we'd all been like, yeah, good man. So
it reminds me of Dion Fanning's line. I think, was it a Georgia game where we got like a ridiculous penalty at home against him, and Dion's line was, it was such a bad decision, even Robbie Keane didn't see it. And I was like, Robbie would have won a few handballs, all right.
The Irish Daily Mail back page, Shane's pain. Shane Long is out. He's got a hamstring strain, which is like really the worst possible news from an Ireland perspective, because he just got back into form. He's in a goal scoring streak, and we all know they never finish until they're over, and then they never come back for like 18 months. But he was in the middle of one, and he's done a hamstring, so he's out for both games. Liverpool in dark on Club World Cup dates. So the Club World Cup, there was some suspicion that maybe this wasn't going to be a tournament that existed, because it's going to be an expanded tournament in a couple of years' time. There's going to be a couple of years for it to be in remission, but now it is coming back, and it's going to be in December, and it's going to be in Doha, in Qatar, for them to use as a trial run for the World Cup.
That's the Long. I think your point about Long is valid. Like, would we be that surprised if we're 1-0 down and he came off the bench and nicked a goal somehow? As you say, the form he was in. This is the Mirror. Play us and see. Wolves star Doherty tells McCarthy he and Coleman can both fit into Ireland lineup. New deal from Madrid hero and Portuguese Manco War. That's for Felix. A wonder kid, 120 million fight City and Man United. Just the comments that Doherty made as well. Doherty's very refreshing. He doesn't give these kind of boring media interviews, and he was kind of saying, like, of course we can play together. That game in Gibraltar, was it really that bad? I tend to forget about that game, and I will support him, but like there's no reason we can't play together. I kind of think he's right as well.
He's 100% right.
The Gibraltar game is a bit of a farce, for everyone.
Well, why can't you love Big Mick? It's like, well, because he's just completely inconsistent with a lot of stuff like this, where I'm not reading anything into that Gibraltar game. The weather was too bad.
But then he's not playing the two of them together again.
On the basis of 70 minutes.
Fair point. And also, I suppose, if you're looking at Sean Maguire, his place in the pecking order certainly suffered because of that game, which I think is also probably a bit harsh.
The Telegraph, well, they saw some bad stuff at the weekend they didn't like, so they're going to fix it right now. Anthony Joshua may have been injured in sparring in advance of being knocked out in the most shocking defeat since Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson. I mean, it probably is the most shocking defeat. Certainly when you looked at the belly of Ruiz, it was like, wow, my career as an elite sports person might not be over after all.
Yeah.
Murray's Miracle returned Sir Andy to play doubles with Lopez at Queen's Club and losing it. Sorry, I buried the lead there. England's favourites for their home World Cup, meeting the Queen last week, knocked on their arse by Pakistan yesterday. But of course, they're also bitter about that. It wasn't a fair defeat to our former... Did they own Pakistan at one point? Did they own Pakistan and India? Or did they just own India?
I don't know about Pakistan. I should know that, actually.
Host angered by Pakistan treatment of ball. Captain Morgan facing rap for slow over 8.
Morgan critical of attitude as well
It never goes tits up like it does with the England.
The Guardian. What's your take on Morgan critical of attitude as favourite slump to Pakistan defeat? With Morgan playing, do you want England to win?
I wish him all the best. I legitimately wish him all the best. I don't think it's... I have no problems with Morgan playing for... Like, the next generation of Irish players have to play for Ireland. They can make a living in England, whatever, but he had no choice, really. There was no test nation. We didn't have test status, so off you go. Happy days. No?
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Looked out of sorts, says Michael Vaughan in his rankings of Owen Morgan. Had one of his average days as captain. Did not quite get his fielders in the right spots or keep them on it. No fluency with the bat. Not great. But I do love when the England cricket team, particularly at home, after they've been like, we're going to win the World Cup. And then you're like, no, you're not. No, you're not. England did once own Pakistan, I'm told by Enda here. Did you? That was according to Wiki.
They carved up the Middle East.
It was part of India when They own the Indian subcontinent.
Fascinating part of the world. If you're to get a taxi driver in Dublin now, Pakistan taxi driver would be nearly favourite in terms of. Yeah, I find them most friendly people, like to a man, like, and it's just and you they're always up for the chat, you know.
Do you know their anthem?
I do, yeah, definitely, yeah. They you can always kind of tell. You get into driving. If you look at their name, you have a good, because they're very likely Indian or Pakistan, but you know from the name, sort of. And they have a fascinating history as well. When they play cricket, it's pretty feisty. Yeah. Well, I'd like to go there, actually, part of the world I haven't been to.
Yeah, me too. Phil Mickelson is confirmed for the JP McManus Pro-Am in Adair Manor in 2020. Once again, the JP McManus Pro-Am going to have by far the best field of any tournament in Europe for the entire 2020. I wonder how that happens. But, you know, fair play. It's going to be great in Adair Manor. It is actually going to be amazing if you're into golf. And so what are we, 12 months more out from it at this point, and already they're announcing people like Phil Mickelson, so you can just imagine who else they're going to announce. Brett Favre walking into the local in Galway. There'll be a lot of Brett Favres walking around Adair and the rest of the country for that week.
Yeah. Fairness to JP,
he knows how to put on a good show.
He does.
And when Brett Favre was walking around, was there, I mean, you Google Brett Favre, you get some odd stuff sometimes.
Yeah, he was there with his wife and kids, I think.
Right.
Like Newbridge has a church. It has 2 pubs, one of which doesn't open, I think, as much as it used to, and used to be a shop which is closed. There was a shop in the middle which is gone. The telephone box is obviously gone. It has a funeral parlour, and it has a hall. But it's basically in the middle of nowhere. And Brett Favre literally just walked in unannounced on a Monday night, and then he went up to the other pub in the town, in the village, and I think he had a game of pool. And it was all on a Monday night in Newbridge, and all because of Father Tommy Conway.
Wow.
Yeah.
And hung out with the locals and left good stories behind? Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I should hope so.
Okay.